societal guilt in any form. And I don't think that, for whatever reason, Chris Brown is still very successful in the music industry. He did his time. If we are the people who believe that you do your time, you get a second chance, which America loves to give forgiveness. Chris Brown, is doing his thing. Apparently he still sells a lot of records, or they don't call them records anymore. But you know what I'm talking about. And it's one of those things where, do we really want to judge people based on their personal lives or on what they do for their profession?
Is there any other circumstance in which we would not? Let me say, if Ray Rice is going to be judged by this, if Adrian Peterson is going to be judged by this, but they can't
put it. But who is going to? How can they suspend Chris Brown?
There is there is no commissioner of music. You're correct. However, but I would certainly say that, first of all, here's the thing: idea of like Obama was telling everyone, everyone's got to. It's on us. We have to do our part.
But again, this is my problem with Obama and with those who put together the programming of the Grammys and framing it in this way. It was just suck.
Okay, if you want to do your part, then you don't nominate Chris Brown for a Grammy. All right.
Fair enough.
As you say, you are persona non grata. And by the way, let me observe that if anybody I knew personally, I knew was beating their wife, beating their girlfriend, doing something as horrible as that. Actually, now that I think of it, there was one guy who was I didn't know personally, but who was, say, familiar in the DC policy circle world, who was, let's just say, treating women badly, the shortest and simplest way of doing that. And word got out, and he ended up leaving DC. And I have not encountered him since. But the attitude was like,
so chivalry is not dead, Jim Geraghty. And again, I believe that you were probably one of the more romantic people I've met, having heard you talk about the things that you do for Valentine's Day for Mrs. Campaign Spot and others. But as we both know, being in a long-term relationship, it's not just about romance. That's not what makes it last. And coming up in our next segment, we are going to have the one and only Ed Morrissey on the show with us to talk with us about something that he does that I bet a lot of you had no idea. I'm Mickey White. He's Jim Geraghty. We'll be right back.
Just wanna taste of it. Diet Coke. Just wanna catch ya. It's electric when you hit my lips. Feels so good to hold you. It's the no calories that makes me feel like this. Just for the fun of it. Just for the thrill of it. Just for the love. Ooh, just wanna taste of it. Diet Coke.
I could have used a little more cowbell.
Welcome back to the Jim and Mickey Show. I am Jim Geraghty, joined by Mickey White, and I want to share a quick little anecdote to explain a bit about one of our rare guests coming up in a moment. Blocking turns you into a nasty person. Basically, you're constantly told that you're wrong. The comment sections are full of idiots. People miss the point of what you're saying, and it just kind of cultivates a hostility and misanthropy in most writers, or particularly over a long period of time. The exception to this rule is Ed Morrissey over at Hot Air, who Ed is starting back what was Captain Ed's Corner back in the blogospheric Mesozoic era. Ed is one of the nicest guys in all of conservative politics, of journalism, and anybody has encountered. It's always a joy when our paths cross at a CPAC or other things like this. I think he is widely respected as one of the most genial, insightful, and just one of the gems of the blogosphere. So,
do you have a boy crush on Ed?
I know he's just somebody I can count on in a field full of people I can't. So
because
Ed,
I don't disagree with anything you just said, but that's definitely the nicest intro I've ever heard you give anyone. Even though Ed is only our third guest, but still.
He's warming up.
The other two are going to be mad at me now. So.
That was two big handfuls of butt cheek, if you ask me, Jim. That was really nice.
That's exactly the mental picture you wanted when you came on our program, Ed. Thanks very much.
It really was, yeah.
Anyway, Mickey, we want to talk about a kind of a non-political topic to spotlight the fact that political people have other aspects of their lives that are kind of worth taking a look at. Mickey, do you want to kind of lay this out, or?
Well, it's just one of those things that obviously for those of us on the conservative side of life or the right or those who lean right or whatever are familiar with Ed and all of his work at Hot Air and other places. And as Jim said, I think he is one of those happy warriors that people often strive to be. But that's just one part of what Ed does. And you and your wife actually have a whole nother life that we on the internet don't know much about. Ed, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we have been working with a group called Twin Cities Marriage Encounter for about 15 years now. I actually been associated with it for 16 years. We did our own first encounter in 1999 and then got brainwashed and inducted into the cult. No, just kidding. It's a great organization. It's a great organization, and we just really fell in love with it after going through the encounter ourselves. And so we started conducting weekends along with other team couples.
So is it like couples retreat, or what are these weekends like?
Yeah, it's a couples retreat. It's a
movie, or no?
No, it's not like the movie. Okay. And now I never saw the movie, so I'm just guessing that
tropical islands are involved. Let's just put it that way.
Well, yeah, no. For the first few years, we were doing it out of the dorm rooms of St. Thomas Academy, which is a prep school here in the east of St. Paul. And it definitely was not a tropical island resort, especially when we were doing them in, say, November, December, January timeframe out here in the great upper Midwest.
Scenic Minnesota at that time.
Scenic. Yeah. Scenic Minnesota. Well, at least you didn't have to go outside to try to round people up for the sessions, because they weren't going far during those winter months. It was beautiful in the summer and the spring, and maybe even especially in the fall. But in the winter, you could always count on them being inside the room, and all you had to do was just kind of chase them out of their own dorm rooms to get into the meeting room. But it's a structured retreat where couples only share with each other. There's no group sharing. It's not est. Thank goodness. For those of you who are old enough to remember est, which is probably nobody who's on the other side of this microphone, but hey.
No. You're going to have to explain.
I'm thinking Burt Reynolds with his big black mustache, that era.
That's actually, that was that Semi-Tough? I think they did
that's right.
a scene
with
from that.
Chris Christopherson, Burt Reynolds went through S. Yeah. That was back in the late 70s. Yeah, I think in the movie they called it pelfing.
Late 70s, yeah. It was from the movie Semi-Tough. They did a scene about it. Nest was one of these things where they locked you in a conference room for 48 hours and didn't let you go to the restrooms, and basically you were supposed to lose all your inhibitions and therefore become much more one with the universe or something like that.
Did people end up dead?
No, I don't think anybody ended up dead. They certainly ended up unpleasant.
That's a miracle in of itself.
I'm picturing a lot of peeing in the corner.
They rolled on the floor howling and soiled themselves, essentially.
Basically, yeah. They got back to nature in the worst possible way. So no, it's not anything like that. It's a way to structure communications between husbands and wives so that they can work through issues that come up in every marriage, and so the way it works is the team couples will talk about these crises that occur in marriage based on their own experiences, and then work through how we came to a solution, or how maybe we didn't yet come through a solution to something, but we structure it in a way so that people can get used to the communication style of Marriage Encounter that Marriage Encounter teaches.
What do you find are, I guess, kind of your top issues that bring people to these retreats? Are people married? Are these newlyweds, or have they been married a long time?
Usually, we would tell people to wait for a year or two before coming to a Marriage Encounter retreat, unless there's really an issue that's coming up and they're just really struggling. And this is not actually a retreat that's designed for couples whose marriages are really on the rocks. There's actually something else called Retrovi through the same kind of umbrella that deals with marriages in really deep crisis. This is more
kind of a tune-up.
It's kind of a tune-up, or if you're starting to struggle and you're looking for ways to improve communications. But we've had people who showed up from two different residences for the retreat. It's, saying this was our last shot at things. And I mean, we don't necessarily know that before they get there. And we don't actually know it unless they share it with us.
Obviously, communication is really important. What are we not communicating about as couples in general? Because I guess this kind of applies to dating as well. But what do we not communicate about?
Well, I think what happens is there's a number of topics on this. What we talk about is spiritual divorce. And when couples separate, that's not when they first started drifting apart. I mean, that's the end result of them drifting apart. It starts when you can't resolve issues, when you can't communicate through issues. And you need to recognize that so that you can step back and try again in a more effective manner to communicate.
So is this the old version of, calm down, take 10 minutes and actually, try to talk to each other when you're not screaming at each other? Is that the goal?
Well, that's sort of the initial goal, but and the way that you do this, I mean, I can tell you what it is. It's not a big, huge secret, but it involves keeping notebooks, not keeping scoreboards, but keeping notebooks to where you can.
Wait a minute. I'm gonna need to back you up. We have to put the scoreboards away.
Okay, you have to put the scoreboards away. We really do encourage putting the scoreboards away.
I'm making notes to self right now.
Let me refer you to Corinthians on that matter. much wiser than I'll ever be.
So Ed, you may be interrupting Mickey's consecutive win streak. I was going to say, finish your point, Ed, but I kind of have a question about whether the trend is changing. But go ahead with what you were explaining about the.
So what you do is we try to counsel people. Counsel is even the right. Coached people, I think, is a better way. We're not counselors. None of us are counselors. We try to coach people on how to express themselves in a sense of feeling rather than accusation, and to write those things down into the notebooks. And then each person would be doing this if there's an issue on which they need to resolve something difficult. And then you exchange notebooks and read what the other person has written. And what this does, it does a couple of different things. One is it forces you to think rationally about what it is that is the problem. And you're writing it down, and that is a process that requires at least some sort of refinement. You have to refine the emotions into words, and that allows you to think it through rather than just act strictly off of emotions. The other thing it does is it allows both of the people in the relationship to have an equal say, because what you find in relationships is that there's one person who's the talker and one person who's the listener. That's a simplification.
So that is important, is what you're suggesting. Again, taking notes. Everyone's supposed to listen.
Well, not taking notes so much, but yeah, I mean, this is.
You may not be. I am. I don't know about Jim. I'm taking notes.
Well, I mean, the idea here is that rather than have one person basically shut down the other person because they're more assertive or more aggressive in a conversation, both people get a chance to see what the other person is actually feeling, and then after you do that, that's when you come together and try to have a discussion. But at least both people have had a chance to have their say on paper, and that way you have a better chance of actually working your way through a problem. It's not perfect. It's not going to solve everything, but it is a way to make to work through disagreements and conflict in a much more positive manner than just yelling at each other, because as every married couple who's been married for more than the honeymoon knows, I mean, it's not that difficult to slip into the I'm going to start yelling because I'm really ticked off at you mode.
Yeah.
And some start on the honeymoon. I've seen that.
I have actually seen it start. Well, I think for everybody, it starts in the wedding process. I mean, there's there's at least one time when you're going to have that sort of thing.
I was going to say weddings are often the first test of the marriage. The entire process.
Yeah.
So Ed, you've been doing this for how many years?
Well, we've been doing the team couple part for 15 years. We've been president of the board. We're president couple of the board, and that's been since I think 2002. This was a 3-year term, Jim, which tells you never volunteer.
There you go.
You're involved in an organization.
Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't step forward. Sometimes everyone else steps back.
Thanks from Ed Morrissey.
Yeah, this is the Gilligan's Island of board presidency terms. I mean, it was supposed to be the 3-year tour.
Okay, so in the time you've been doing this, I'd be curious about one of the cliches of this is that